This man found revenge after his family passed away from a plane crash. In 2002, Vitaly Kaloyev bought tickets for his wife and 2 kids to come visit him from Russia to Spain, where he worked after being apart for so long. Only a few hours into the flight, a DHL cargo plane crashed into their plane, causing his family and everyone else on that flight to lose their lives. Obviously, Vitaly was devastated. His kids, who were only 10 and 4 years old, were his life. He spent a lot of time trying to understand what went wrong and how did these 2 planes collide. He then learned that Peter Nelson, the air traffic controller who was working that night and monitoring that flight, might have been negligent. Peter was apparently monitoring multiple screens and flights on that night when he should have been just focusing on one. However, he did see the 2 planes traveling towards each other, and he did mention it to the pilots attempting to avoid the crash, but it was still unsuccessful. Vitaly blamed Peter for his family's death, and 2 years later, he tracked him down in Switzerland and took his life. Vitaly said that his intentions were to talk to Peter first, but things escalated, and so he stabbed him in the stomach in his home in front of his children. Vitaly was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Apparently, he only served like 2, but while he was in there, all the inmates looked up to him for taking Peter's life. Crazy, huh? And to this day, Vitaly does not regret doing what he did.
You may have seen Megan is Missing, but you may not know the real-life story behind it. This girl disappeared, and then a few months later, her friend disappeared. And it's just as upsetting, so viewer discretion advised. Ashley Pond was a popular 12-year-old girl who left to walk to the bus stop on January 9th, 2002. But that evening, when she didn't return home, her mom realized that she'd never even gotten to school that day. People weren't sure if Ashley's disappearance was related to foul play or if she'd run away, because a few months earlier, she'd accused her friend's dad of trying to touch her at a sleepover. And because people suck, she was basically called a drama queen and not taken seriously. Her best friend on the dance team, Miranda Gaddis, got heavily involved in the search. And their dance team even organized fundraisers. But on March 8th of that same year, Miranda then went missing while walking to the bus stop. And this was the same bus stop, so people quickly realized that there was a predator among them and he probably lived in the same neighborhood. And the house nearest to the bus stop was owned by Ward Weaver. His daughter went to school with the girls, and remember when I said Ashley was the subject of gossip? Well, Ward Weaver was the man she accused. And after the disappearance, this man dug a hole in his yard and covered it with concrete. But he was so confident that he even invited the media into his house to see that the girls weren't there. This neighborhood nice guy was exposed as a predator on August 13th when his son's girlfriend called 911. She'd been at their house when Ward Weaver attacked her, and luckily she escaped and called 911. But Miranda and Ashley were still missing. While he was in jail for the attack on his son's girlfriend, the landlord came to visit his property. When the landlord looked up, he saw 5 fly strips completely covered with flies. And knowing that there were 2 missing girls in the neighborhood, the landlord realized he just found them. This is a long story, and the rest of the info will be in part 2.
Have you ever heard of the first exorcism ever? Maurice and Nancy.
No, I never heard of that.
You
No,
haven't?
no.
Okay,
This
because
is not The Exorcist, right?
No.
Okay.
This is like real, like footage is there too. But obviously I can't show the footage because it's very disturbing. It starts off with Nancy and Maurice, right?
Yeah.
So Maurice is the one that they notice stuff like changing, right? He's married to Nancy. Everything was so chill. Like he has grandchildren that he played with. Like he was like the fun uncle.
Yeah.
Right? He owns a farm, quiet guy. So imagine, quiet, shy farmer, all of a sudden starts changing. And Nancy noticed this. So Maurice started like, his facial expressions were like, went from like happy and joyous to like dark. You
Bro got possessed.
yeah,
man.
like you can like dark, and like his eyes, like his pupils would be bigger and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
He didn't just become violent. He wanted to like keep his children, and he wanted to.
Bro, it's
Nancy.
always that though.
Yeah.
That's weird as.
That's what I'm
It's
saying.
always that.
Yeah. What Nancy also noticed, one day he was sitting in a chair. His eyes.
Elvis was living fully nocturnal. His schedule was insane. He would wake up at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, then he would go to bed at like 6 in the morning. So this, along with the drugs and the constipation and the poor eating habits, were really... So this, along with the drugs and the constipation and the poor eating habits, were really making his health go crazy. So the day he died, he woke up around 4 in the afternoon and he went to the dentist at 11, like midnight 11, not like lunchtime. And then he went to bed around 6 a.m. He went to the bathroom because he couldn't go back to sleep, and then he never went back to bed. And of course, I'm not trying to make light of the situation, I'm just explaining the events. His girlfriend Ginger found his body on August 16th, 1977. He died when he was 42 years old, which, like, as I do this research, I just, in my head, think he's older than that. And for a while, they told the fans that he had just had a heart attack. Most of this information is, like, somewhat new, but when his girlfriend Ginger found him, he was passed out in the bathroom, his pants were down, he was laying on the floor, surrounded by vomit with his face down. They rushed him to the hospital immediately, but he was already dead. The next part is already up. Also, my Instagram was recently hacked and sold to a magazine company, so this is my new one.
Scary videos we can't explain. In 2013, then President Barack Obama was giving a speech. People noticed one of his Secret Service guards looked very mysterious. Some said he seemed to resemble an alien. He also gave the same robotic movements over and over again. There was lots of talk online about this at the time, but the White House never gave a comment. This video was filmed inside Area 51 back in 1994. Back then, the base was not famous and almost no one knew about it. But one man filmed a mysterious disc flying over the base. You may think this is simply a drone, but those came decades later. So this must either be a secret government project or a UFO. In 2017, the news accidentally broadcast what seems like a UFO. It's a yellow disc-shaped object. The yellow disc flies right in front of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. You may think this is a plane, but no, the airspace around the Capitol building is off limits. To this day, we still don't know what this yellow thing really is.
Breaking news, Janelle and her husband David could now be facing neglect and assault charges. Law enforcement sources say they expect to wrap up their investigation very soon, and Jace was interviewed this past week. The sources say at this point it appears charges will be filed for both neglect and assault. However, what has not been determined yet is whether both Janelle or David will face charges or it will be just one of them. Jace told officers that David, Janelle's husband, had assaulted him and appeared to have visible marks on his neck and arm. This made the investigation that much more serious. In addition, there's also video of the alleged assault that authorities have in their possession. At this time, neither Janelle nor David have spoken out regarding the case. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
You don't value your customers, so let's see if you value your life. I asked for decaffeinated, now a limb must get decapitated. This is even funnier once you know that while we were filming my scene for Saw X, Tobin Bell actually gave me John Kramer's, like, canonical coffee order. You can't hear it super well in the video, but he basically just tells me that he wants the coffee decaf and not a lot of sugar because John is already very shaken up as it is. Also, I just wanted to point out something. When you're watching the movie and you see someone hand him the coffee and say, "Here you go, sir," that's also me. Like, you see me in the background afterwards giving the blueberry scone, but that voice and arm, that's me.
This is why people think that Elvis is still alive. The way that his death was reported was really confusing. First they said it was a heart attack, then they said he had a drug overdose, and then his brother came out and said that Elvis decided to leave this earth. A lot of people know this next thing I'm about to explain, but he died in 1977, and in 2010 they came out and they talked about how he had come in for constipation, and that constipation was never properly or fully treated, and that's what led to his death. Elvis's dad was really skeptical and wanted an autopsy. And for some reason, this autopsy, like the reports that were in it, will not be public until 2027. Everything revolving around his death was very confusing towards the public, which made people think maybe he didn't actually die, maybe he wanted to escape fame. They think that he might have faked his own death. There are a lot of really, really weird conspiracies surrounding the topic too, so if you're interested in me talking about that, please let me know. And follow my TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube for more. It really helps when you interact.
They had something called the 1,000-yard stare. You ever heard of it?
Oh yeah, like that poster with the guys like this?
Yeah, soldiers, after they've been through so much stress, combat, and seeing their loved ones and friends
Yeah.
so many times, they developed a 1,000-yard stare. As you can see in some rappers, specifically like the ones that are in gangs,
Yeah.
that seeing their homies get shot they might develop the 1,000-yard stare. And in the most prominent case is Lil Durk.
Yeah. That makes sense, bro. Bro's from O Block.
Yeah.
Do you see those videos when like the residents walking around there are just walking normally, but there's that's
it's
so
just regular.
normal.
It's
Yeah,
regular,
that's
yeah.
very normal for them.
You become a product of your environment, right?
Yeah.
Regardless like what it is, you're gonna be assimilated into it. You'll be used to it, you'll adapt, or you just won't exist.
Yeah.
Because the environment either makes you or breaks you, right?
Yeah, fact.
Morbid Facts, Part 132. Angelina Jolie was once so depressed that she tried to hire a hitman to kill her. She felt that a murder would be easier on her family than if she took her own life. But the would-be hitman talked her out of it by asking her to wait a month and reconsider her decision. The skin of certain fish species can be grafted onto severe burns and diabetic wounds. The material recruits the body's own cells and is eventually converted into living tissue. According to a recent study, people in the US who were born before 1996 have a lower IQ than those born afterwards. This is due to the negative effects of leaded gasoline, which was finally banned completely on January 1st, 1996. In the late 1980s, a woman went on a vacation getaway where singles could meet other singles. She quickly thought she met the man of her dreams and decided to sleep with him that night. But when she woke up in the hotel room the next morning, the man was gone and there was a small wooden coffin on the table next to her. Inside was a note that read, "You are now HIV positive. Welcome to the world of AIDS."
Did you see that video of the Grim Reaper in El Salvador?
No.
It's on video. It was like looking out over a bridge, and this car got in a wreck, went off the side of the bridge. That person unfortunately died.
Oh no.
But right after they went off,
it.
the semi-truck drove past, and on top of the semi-truck, not even kidding you, a man in a dark cloak is just like looking down.
What in the world, dude? That's so unnormal.
Normal.
Abnormal.
That's crazy.
Could it be AI?
No, that's a legit person walking on top of the truck.
Yo, even if it's not the Grim Reaper, what dude's standing on top of a semi-truck going down the highway with a black coat on?
You have no idea how creepy Elvis was. He has a record for going after underage girls. He started dating his wife Priscilla when she was 14. And because she looked so young, he bought her a wardrobe to make her look more like an adult. She had to wear heavy makeup so she could look older and had to dye her hair black so she could look like Elvis. She said she felt like a doll. Elvis would also invite her child friends over to have underwear parties. Middle and high school girls, like young girls, okay, would stand outside of his house and cheer like, you know, fangirls. And instead of sending them away, he would invite them inside. They would have pillow fights and tickle parties and wrestling sessions. Elvis spent hundreds of dollars buying Polaroid film and taking pictures of these young, minor, underage girls while they were indecent. After his divorce, Elvis tried to convince this nightclub owner to let him raise his 14-year-old daughter and then date her at the same time in Graceland, and the owner declined. This is just the tip of the iceberg though. Let me know if you want to see more. Also, my Instagram was recently hacked and sold to a magazine company, so this is my new one.
Breaking news, a mother and her boyfriend have been accused of burning her 3 children with a blowtorch. Authorities recently received a report of the 3 children being abused in the home. All 3 of those children are under the age of 12. After the allegation was made, an investigation was conducted. It was during that investigation that officers determined that Ashley Ableton and her boyfriend had burned her 3 children several times with the blowtorch. The lieutenant said that the burns were severe and the children had signs of other kinds of abuse. On October 5th, deputies executed a search warrant on the home and arrested both Abelman and her boyfriend. They have both since been charged with 1 count of torture/willful abuse of a child. They are currently both being held with bond pending their first appearance, and the investigation is ongoing. Because it is a case involving minors, there are no further details released. I'll keep you guys updated. What do you think? Drop in the comments.
I was watching a conversation on Joe Rogan. This guy was pretty much saying, if there was vampires, we're considered the pests.
Upper primates that would be 10 times more intelligent than a human, that would keep the human numbers in check.
Let's say you take a wolf out of an environment, and then now there's overpopulation of bunnies.
Oh yeah, okay.
What if we were the pest, and then the vampires were like the superior human, but we won?
We won the war.
We won the war.
That's hard.
And then we like overpopulated it.
Oh no, that's kind of crazy. So you can see that with every folklore then. Maybe like, you know, the big bats in the Philippines?
Yeah.
We won that war too. You guys no longer exist. Or like
The duende?
Duendes. Yeah, like there isn't a bunch of them because we still won that war. We are still the superior.
How do you know that's where they are?
See?
It's because you know like the inner earth theory.
Yeah, see? That's where it gets confusing because if one appears, that means there's gotta be
There's
some
gotta
other.
be, there's gotta be more,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But what if one day you just fall through the center of the earth? You like look around and like everybody's like that.
Giants, bats, vampires just looking at you like, yo, who's this guy?
It's like different realms, fam.
The techniques for executing individuals through trained elephants varied, but they often involved the use of sharp blades affixed to the elephant's feet. The elephant's hooves were fitted with iron instruments, the ends of which resembled knives. On execution days, the elephant driver would ride the animals, and the convicted individuals would be subjected to their brutality. Ibn Battuta, a traveler and historian, provided a chilling eyewitness account of this form of execution during his visit to Delhi. He described an incident in which individuals accused of attempting to assassinate the vizier were sentenced to death by elephant. According to his account, the elephants, with sharp iron-clad hooves, would wrap their trunks around the victims, toss them into the air, and then catch them with their teeth. The elephants followed the orders of the emperor and the elephant driver. If the order was to dismember the individual, the elephant would use its iron instruments to cut the victim into pieces, flinging them into the horrified crowd. If the order was to spare the individual, they would be left lying before the emperor until their skin was removed, stuffed with hay, and the flesh left for scavenging dogs.
When his body was examined, there were 4 months worth of poop in his system, as well as 8 different types of drugs that he was prescribed. And after all of this, the doctor that prescribed all of these drugs lost his license. Some people will do like anything for money. Like over the last 20 months of his life, he was prescribed over 12,000 pills. When he traveled, he would carry 3 suitcases just full of drugs. Like, picture that. The world was heartbroken over Elvis's death. After he was pronounced dead, there was a public showing of his casket in Graceland, and thousands of fans flooded over to pay their respects to him. So many people were devastated over his death that the president decided to send 300 national troops in order to maintain order during this viewing. And when they buried his body, 80,000 people lined the street. There was also a funeral that was just for like his family and close friends. Everything's in the playlist below though. Also, my Instagram was recently hacked and sold to a magazine company, so this is my new one.
The body of Ashley Pond was found in a box in Ward Weaver's shed, and the body of Miranda Gaddis was found buried under a concrete slab in his yard.
Given how much scrutiny Ward Weaver was under, the true surprise is how long it took them to discover the girls' bodies.
The slab poured shortly after Miranda disappeared. Ashley Pond's stepmother, Mary Campobasso, is convinced at least one of the girls is buried underneath it. She places a homemade sign on the slab as a dramatic message to investigators.
Did you notice a smell when you walked up the pathway? I did. Okay, that's all I have to say about it.
The speculation is very, very high that they are, in fact, of the missing girls.
Late this afternoon, crime scene investigators processing the crime scene behind the house have recovered a second set of human remains. These remains were in the ground in a barrel underneath the area where the concrete slab was.
At about 4:15 this afternoon, the Oregon State Medical Examiner has positively identified the remains discovered yesterday as the body of Miranda Gaddis.
But what if I told you that Ward Weaver came from a long line of monsters? His father, Ward Weaver Jr., committed a very similar heinous act. In 1982, while working as a long-haul trucker, he stopped to help a couple whose car had broken down on the side of the road. He beat the boyfriend to death before taking the girlfriend to his house to do unspeakable things. He strangled her and had his son, Ward Weaver III, which is the Ward Weaver from the Ashley and Miranda story, he had him help bury the body even though he was just 10 years old. He said that wasn't his first murder, and his truck logs match up with 24 unsolved murders along West Coast highways. And then his grandfather was also a monster. He regularly abused and essayed his wife, who was also weird. She made Ward Weaver Jr., the trucker's serial killer, sleep in the bed with her until he was 18, including on his wedding night. Talk about red flag. So he went on to be a possible trucker serial killer, and then her grandson went on to murder 2 preteen girls. And then Frances Weaver on the left shot and killed someone in a robbery gone wrong. So do you think the murder gene is genetic or trauma? Comment your thoughts below, but back to our main story. So while he was in jail for the act against his son's girlfriend and then the bodies were discovered, he was served with additional charges. There were a ton of charges, so I'm not going to go over all of them, but he did plead guilty. And the plea bargain allowed him to avoid the death penalty for what he did.
Miranda's sister asked Ward Weaver in prison why he did it, and he said that he first murdered Ashley because he didn't want her to go to the police about what he'd done to her. And then one morning, Miranda was walking to the bus stop and saw him doing some of the cleanup. He told her that Ashley was in the house, and when she went into the house, he also killed her.
So he's currently serving 2 life sentences and his father is on death row. And the house in Oregon City ended up getting demolished. This is such an interesting and eerie story, and I hate to think what was going through Miranda's mind when she realized that she was with her friend's killer and she was next. Rest in peace to the both of them, they deserved better, and let me know what you guys thought about the 2-part story format in the comments.
In 1567, Wilhelm von Grumbach, a maverick knight within the Holy Roman Empire, met a gruesome fate due to his rebellious actions and charges of treason. At the execution site, the executioner ripped out von Grumbach's heart. What makes this execution even more macabre is that the executioner proceeded to thrust the extracted heart in front of von Grumbach's face, accompanied by the chilling words, "Von Grumbach, behold your false heart." Following the removal of his heart, von Grumbach's body was subjected to further dismemberment as the executioner quartered him. The same fate befell his principal associate, who had been part of the rebellion. An eyewitness account chillingly described how, after his heart had been ripped out, Chancellor Brooke, presumably another individual involved in the affair, emitted horrifying screams for quite some time. The fate of Wilhelm von Grumbach serves as a stark reminder of the brutal methods of punishment and the intense political and social tensions that could arise during the Holy Roman Empire.
Wake the fuck up.
I think Mr. Beast was trying to tell us something. I was just watching his last video, right? The $1 to $100 million house. Look at this real quick. So pay attention. You know how he be doing the cutscenes to the next place, right? Look.
And so, to avoid being handed court papers, we decided to fly all the way across the country to Mass.
Y'all see that?
I'll see you at the next house. The only bad news is it's across the entire country. The good news is it's a $45 million mega mansion. Whoa. Luckily, our candy is very affordable, but you want to know what's not very affordable? The final house. Or should I say, the $139 million?
You just got extra, so why in the first clip, when we was transitioning to the new house, I don't know if it's just me, maybe I just think too much, man. One more time. Wake up!
If you ever woke up at 3:15 a.m., you might be cursed. Like,
why though?
Legit. I don't know if you ever heard about the Amity House.
No.
This is a real haunted house. I believe in the States somewhere. You know Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Conjuring investigators?
Oh yeah.
The real life like demonologists, right?
Yeah. You said that.
So they claim this house to be one of those houses that is truly attached to demons. The story goes that there was this man. They said a voice came to his head and told him to murder his 3 family members, his 2 daughters and his wife. Now what's weird, and still to this day, they have no evidence and no like reasoning why the family members didn't wake up and didn't fight back. So what happened was each of the family members, they were lying down straight on their face like this, flat, and each one didn't move while he went ahead and killed every single one of them with a gun.
What the
Now, what happened, obviously he went to jail and he did the questioning and shit.
Yeah.
But that house ended up...
I don't trust government. I've been in it my whole life, and I don't trust it. There's a group of folks that inherently, they're power hungry and they're evil, and they don't share yours and my values. And you can talk about the compartmentalization of this stuff, and how do you keep something like that secret? Well, I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I back up to Oak Ridge National Laboratory. And there's 6,000 people that work at Oak Ridge that live in my district. But Oak Ridge is where they developed the atomic bomb. Well, one of them anyway. And I was knocking on this old guy's door as an old man. He's putting his flag out. And I was talking to him. I said, "You a veteran?" And he said, "No." And he was kind of a little embarrassed. He said, "I worked at Oak Ridge during the war." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And I hugged him. I said, "Listen, brother," I said, "if it wasn't for you," I said, "my dad was on Okinawa. They were getting ready to invade mainland Japan. Truman said there'd been 1 million casualties. I mean, the kids were sharpening sticks. It was going to be brutal. That island fighting, and you'd have backed them up into their own homeland. They had the suicide subs and the kamikazes, and they were loaded up."